Hello and welcome to FedBiz 5. I'm Sam Fields. Quick show of hands. Have you ever had a month where it felt like your pipeline was on fire? Then 2 weeks later, it's crickets, and nobody can explain why. One day, a task order is almost ready. Then the contracting officer goes quiet. Then it pops back up out of nowhere with a 48-hour turnaround. Then suddenly, it's September, and everyone is sprinting like it's the last lap of a relay race. If that sounds familiar, good. You're not doing anything wrong. You're just experiencing how federal funding actually behaves. Today's episode is about how government contract funding works and how to make it work for you. Not in a textbook way, in a why does this happen to my pipeline way. Because once you understand the funding and obligation cycle, a lot of the chaos starts to make sense. And more importantly, you can position earlier, time outreach better, and stop getting surprised by the same patterns every year. All right, let's demystify this. First, the simplest way to think about federal funding is a three-step chain. 1. Congress provides budget authority through appropriations. 2. Agencies receive permission to use that authority over time through processes like apportionment and internal allocations. 3. The agency obligates funds when it makes a legally binding commitment, like awarding a contract, issuing a task order, or placing an order. And that last word is the one contractors feel the most: obligation. Because you can hear the money is there 100 times, but if it's not obligated, it's not real to your business yet. And here's the key. Obligations follow rules and timing that have very little to do with your personal sense of urgency. Now let's connect this to the thing everyone loves to hate, the federal fiscal year. The federal fiscal year runs October 1st through September 30th. And that September 30th deadline creates pressure, because many types of funds expire or become harder to use if they are not obligated in time. So agencies get very focused on two things as the year progresses. Do we have funds left? And can we obligate them before the clock runs out? That's why Q4 gets chaotic. Not because agencies suddenly became decisive in July, it's because the timeline forces their hand. Now, let's talk about what happens earlier in the year, because that's where most contractors get confused. Here's a real scenario. Imagine you're a small IT firm. You've been told a task order is coming. You've had meetings. The program office loves you. Then, January hits, and everything slows down. The contracting officer stops replying as quickly. The timeline drifts. The program team sounds unsure. This is often not personal. It's because many agencies start the year under constrained conditions, especially if Congress hasn't passed full-year appropriations and the government is running under a continuing resolution. Under a continuing resolution, agencies may be limited in starting new programs or making certain commitments. They're often operating cautiously until they know what the full-year funding picture really is. So the procurement doesn't always die. It often just stalls. This is why contractors experience the feast-or-famine feeling. It's not just your pipeline, it's the budget environment. Now, let's make the next piece simple. Even when an agency has money for the year, it doesn't mean every office can spend freely on day one. Funding typically gets broken down internally, often by headquarters, major commands, or program offices, and then allocated out. So sometimes the contracting office is ready, but the program office doesn't have its final funding loaded yet. Or they have funding, but not at the right color of money. Because federal money also has categories. Different appropriations can come with rules on what it can be used for and when. That's why you might hear statements like, "We can fund services, but we can't fund equipment yet." Or, "We can issue the solicitation, but we can't award until funding is confirmed." Or the classic, "We're waiting on budget." Now, here's where contractors can start gaining an edge. If you understand that what you're really waiting on is obligation, you start asking better questions. Not, "Is it funded?" but things like, "Is this requirement planned for obligation this quarter? Is it tied to current year funds or multi-year funds? Is it likely to move under a continuing resolution or only after full appropriations? Is this a new requirement or a recompete with existing funding patterns?" You're not asking anyone to share sensitive info. You're trying to understand timing and constraints so you can plan like a professional.
Now, let's talk about why Q4 spending feels like it comes out of nowhere. Most agencies do not wait until September to start thinking about spending. But the reality is that year-end forces closeouts. Unobligated funds can become a problem. Program offices scramble to execute, contracting shops get slammed, response windows shrink. And that's why contractors feel like the government is moving faster in August and September. It's not faster in a healthy way. It's faster in a deadline way. Now, I want to give you 3 real-world examples that put this into contractor language. Example 1, the services contractor who gets ghosted in February. You're providing professional services, you did a capability briefing in December, the team liked you, then silence in February. Possible reasons. The agency may still be operating under a continuing resolution, or internal allocations aren't finalized, or the buyer is waiting on approval to release funds, or the requirement got rescoped because leadership changed priorities after the new year. That doesn't mean they aren't buying. It often means they can't obligate yet. So the smart move is not to panic. It's to stay present without being annoying, and to time your follow-up for moments when the agency is likely to restart movement. Example 2, the small business that misses Q4 because they start outreach too late. A lot of contractors wait until July and think, okay, it's Q4 season, let's market. The problem is, by July, many buyers have already built their shortlists. They're already leaning toward vendors they trust. They're already planning how to obligate. So if you want to win Q4 spend, your best work is often done in Q2 and Q3, when there's enough time for market research, relationship building, and positioning. Example 3, the 8A company trying to time outreach. If you're in a socioeconomic category, timing can matter even more because some buys are shaped by set-aside decisions. Those decisions are often influenced by what the buyer sees in market research. So if you show up too late, the acquisition strategy may already be locked. The earlier you are visible and credible, the more likely the buyer can justify a small business approach with confidence. Now, let's get into practical takeaways you can use immediately. Takeaway 1, learn the difference between obligation and outlay. An obligation is the government making a binding commitment. An outlay is when money actually gets paid out over time. For contractors, obligations are a leading indicator. Outlays lag behind. So don't just track spending, track the pattern of obligations in your category. Takeaway 2, use usaspending.gov like a contractor, not like a journalist. Here's what I mean. If you go to usaspending.gov and you only look at totals, you won't learn much. Instead, look for patterns. Which agencies obligate heavily in your NAICS and service area? When do they obligate the most during the year? Do they spike in Q4, or do they obligate steadily? Are you seeing recurring vendors? That's an incumbency signal. Are you seeing new vendors show up? That signals an opening. This is one of the easiest ways to turn, I feel like it's random, into, I see the rhythm. Takeaway 3, adjust outreach timing to fiscal year milestones. Here's a simple way to think about outreach windows. Early fiscal year, October through December, agencies may be slow if funding is uncertain, but it's a great time to get on the radar and support market research. Mid-year, roughly January through May, a lot of acquisition planning is happening, requirements are being shaped, and market research is active. This is a strong time to position. Late year, June through September, execution gets urgent. Awards move faster. Response windows shrink. Buyers tend to favor known vendors. So the big strategy is do visibility work earlier so you're not trying to introduce yourself during the sprint. Takeaway 4, treat market research as your entry point. Market research is not just something agencies do. It's a moment contractors can influence ethically and professionally. When a buyer is validating vendors, checking capability, or deciding on set-aside strategy, your clarity matters. That means your presence across key surfaces should be aligned. Your capability statement says what you do in procurement language. Your profiles are accurate and consistent. Your website supports your government narrative. And yes, your registrations matter too. And remember, SAM.gov is one of the key places buyers validate eligibility and vendor information. And it's also where opportunities get posted and tracked. If your story is inconsistent across places, you create doubt, and doubt slows buyers down. Takeaway 5. Build a funding-aware pipeline. Not every opportunity is equal. Some requirements are tied to stable, recurring spend and predictable cycles. Others are tied to one-time initiatives, special funding, or late-year rush buys. If you can classify your pipeline by likely timing and funding behavior, you can plan resources better. Which bids are likely to hit fast? Which ones will drift? Which ones are vulnerable under a continuing resolution? Which ones are likely to surge in Q4? This is how mature contractors stop getting whiplash. Now let's land the plane. Here's the big idea. Federal funding isn't random. It's procedural, it's cyclical, and it's deadline-driven. Your pipeline feels unpredictable when you don't understand what you're actually waiting on. Most of the time, you're waiting on one thing: the agency's ability to obligate funds. When you understand that, you stop reacting to silence. You start timing outreach. You position earlier, and you build a pipeline that matches the government's rhythm instead of fighting it. Now, if you're listening and thinking, okay, I get it, but I don't have time to track obligation patterns, watch timing shifts, and still run my business, that's exactly where FedBiz Access can help. We built FedBiz 365 for this moment. It's a powerful platform designed to help small businesses move faster and smarter in the government marketplace. FedBiz 365 helps you surface relevant contracts quickly, break down solicitations into plain English, and even generate proposal templates in seconds so you're not starting from scratch every time. It also helps you identify the right government buyers for what you sell, with the contract information and context you need to approach them intelligently. And it gives you a clean way to manage your pipeline so you can track opportunities, prioritize the right ones, and stay ahead of key timing windows throughout the fiscal year. If you want a tool that helps you turn funding cycles into real, actionable opportunities, call us for a free demonstration of FedBiz 365. Thanks for listening to FedBiz 5, and until next time, stay proactive, stay prepared, and keep winning in government contracting.